Kelvin the Vampire Slayer. Welcome to the Hellmouth." Kelvin Hendricks leaned against his locker at Sheppydale High, the picture of effortless style with his long blonde hair. New town, new school. All he wanted was a normal life, one without monsters lurking in the shadows. But a strange feeling of dread already clung to the air in these hallways. This place felt wrong. The school library was his first stop. "I was told to expect you," a man with a kind face and tweed jacket said. He was Giles, the librarian. "I am your watcher, Kelvin. And this library, I'm afraid, is the epicenter. The school is built upon a Hellmouth, a gateway for demonic energy. So much for normal." In the crowded cafeteria, Kelvin found himself drawn to two students sitting alone, a shy, red-headed girl named Willow, and a lanky boy with a nervous energy named Xander. They were outcasts, just like he always ended up being. "Is this seat taken?" Kelvin asked. For the first time that day, he smiled. The next morning, fear was a cold fog in the school. A student had been found in the alley behind the gym. The whispers followed Kelvin everywhere, drained of all his blood. Kelvin knew what that meant. The Hellmouth was open for business. That night, as Kelvin researched old town maps in the library, a figure emerged from the shadows. He was tall, dark, and brooded with an ancient sadness. "The harvest is coming," the man said, his voice a low rumble. "The master will rise." Before Kelvin could ask who he was, the man, Angel, was gone. "The harvest is a ritual," Giles explained, his face pale as he pointed to a passage in a heavy, leather-bound book. "The master, an ancient and powerful vampire, is trapped beneath the town. His acolyte will offer up vessels, human victims, so the master can gain strength and break free." The book mentioned a gathering place for the young, the Bronze. "I'm going alone," Kelvin said, packing wooden stakes into his bag. "No way," Xander declared. Grabbing a makeshift cross, Willow stood beside him, holding a bottle of what looked like holy water. "We're your friends, Kelvin. We're in this with you." Kelvin looked at his new friends and saw he couldn't stop them. The Bronze was a chaotic swirl of flashing lights and pounding music. On the dance floor, Kelvin spotted him, a handsome, charismatic vampire named Luke, charming a group of students. He was leading them towards a back exit, his smile full of predatory promise. They followed Luke to a deserted boiler room beneath the club. The students he'd led were mesmerized, standing placidly as Luke addressed a dark, ornate symbol carved into the floor. "Great Master," Luke intoned, his voice echoing in the chamber. "The harvest is here. Drink of these mortals and rise." "The only thing rising here is the dust from your bones," Kelvin announced, stepping from the shadows. Luke sneered and snapped his fingers. Two vampires dropped from the pipes above, their faces twisted into monstrous snarls as they lunged towards the slayer. Kelvin was a blur of motion. He sidestepped the first vampire, driving a stake from his belt deep into its chest. It shrieked and exploded into a cloud of ash. But the second one was on him, grabbing him from behind, its fangs seeking his throat. Meanwhile, a third vampire had cornered Willow and Xander against a wall of humming machinery. "The cross! Use the cross!" Willow yelled. Xander, trembling, shoved the makeshift cross forward. The vampire hissed, shielding its eyes, but its monstrous face was filled with more rage than fear. Seeing the cross wasn't enough, Willow reacted instantly. She uncorked her bottle and flung the holy water in a wide arc. The vampire shrieked as the liquid seared its skin like acid, steam rising from its face. It stumbled back, momentarily blinded and in agony. Back with Kelvin, he used the vampire's own momentum against it. He slammed his head back into the creature's face, stunning it, then twisted his body, throwing it over his shoulder and into a rusty control panel. Sparks flew as the vampire convulsed, and then turned to dust. Kelvin turned just in time to see the vampire recovering from the holy water, lunging for Willow. Without a second to think, he grabbed a stake from his boot and threw it with perfect aim. It flew across the room and embedded itself in the creature's back. With a final gurgle, it too dissolved into nothing. The mesmerized students began to stir, the spell broken. "Get them out of here," Kelvin shouted. As Willow and Xander guided the dazed students towards the exit, Luke finally stepped forward, clapping slowly. "Impressive, Slayer. But the opening act is over." Luke moved with unnatural speed, a dark streak in the dim light. He threw a punch that Kelvin barely blocked, the force of it sending the Slayer stumbling back against a thick pipe. Luke was stronger, faster than the others. This was a different kind of fight. "The master chose me for a reason," Luke growled, his handsome face shifting into its true demonic form, a ridged brow, glowing yellow eyes, and fangs dripping with venom. He snarled and kicked a heavy metal barrel at Kelvin as if it were a toy. Kelvin dove out of the way, the barrel crashing into the wall behind him with a deafening clang. He came up with a length of heavy chain, whipping it towards Luke's legs. But Luke was too fast, leaping gracefully over it before lunging again. Their battle was a whirlwind of violence. They crashed against pipes that hissed with steam, their blows echoing in the vast chamber. Luke feinted high and slashed low, his claws tearing a deep gash across Kelvin's arm. Kelvin cried out in pain, but fought on, fueled by adrenaline. Kelvin was weakening, his arm bleeding freely. He needed an opening. He dodged another of Luke's savage attacks, deliberately positioning himself so the vampire would slam his fist into a high-pressure steam pipe. The pipe fractured with a loud crack. Scalding steam erupted from the broken pipe, spewing directly into Luke's face. He roared in pain and fury, stumbling back and clawing at his eyes. It was the opening Kelvin needed. He spotted a piece of pipe that had broken off in the chaos, its end jagged and sharp. Kelvin grabbed the makeshift weapon. He put all his remaining strength into one final, desperate charge, plunging the sharpened pipe deep into the vampire's chest. Luke's yellow eyes went wide with shock. "The master will rise," Luke choked out, before his body stiffened and exploded into a shower of fine gray ash. Kelvin stood panting, covered in dust. Willow and Xander rushed back in. "You did it!" Xander exclaimed, his voice full of awe. It was over. But as Kelvin caught his breath, he looked down at the gash on his arm. A single drop of his blood dripped down, landing squarely in the center of the symbol on the floor. It sizzled, and the symbol flared with a blinding, blood-red light. From deep within the earth, a dry, ancient voice laughed. "I live," it whispered.